Everybody gets out safely from the fire in episode 9, and now it's just a matter of waiting for the plane. They can pretty much leave whenever, but Pope and Key want to tell their parents first. Pope knows that it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and Key's pretty sure that it'll be the same at her house. And they were right. I mean, it is really uncomfortable, but Cleo does most of the talking in Pope's conversation, and Cleo convinces Pope's parents to let him go down to South America and chase after this thing. Key, on the other hand, that's a totally different story. She never really has a conversation with her parents because when she shows up at her house, she's greeted by guys from that troubled youth camp. Leaving to go off and hang out with her friends the other day and blowing off the conversation with her parents was just the last straw for them. They called up the camp and they had him pick Key up. And she fights tooth and nail, but she is going to Kitty Hawk Adventure Therapy Camp. Think about the movie Holes, but instead of in the middle of the desert, this place is in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It sucks. And Key is going to be miserable there, especially considering she's going to be there for a while. We're talking a couple months. While Key is getting checked into this camp, everyone's shown up at the airstrip, and they're wondering where the hell she is. They figure that it's got to have something to do with her parents, so JJ takes it upon himself to go pick her up. He heads over there, and they definitely don't want to see JJ. They're reluctant to tell him any information. They just tell him that she's going to be gone for a long time. And it's not a comfortable conversation. Key's dad hates JJ. And he doesn't really have a problem with telling him as much. JJ calls up his cousin Ricky because he remembers that Ricky went to a similar camp. And he asks him, "What camp did you go to?" And Ricky tells him, "I went to some place called Kitty Hawk." So at least now JJ has a beat on where Key is. JJ's not about to leave a pug behind, so he calls up John B and explains the situation, saying, "I gotta go get her." John B doesn't want to give him any more time. He wants to get on the plane and get going. JJ understands, and he knows the clock is ticking, so he tells John B, "Look, if you gotta leave, we'll meet you down there, but I'm not leaving without Key." As he's driving, though, he gets a flat tire, and then he finds out that this wasn't just a normal flat. His tire was shot out by Barracuda Mike. Mike has come looking for revenge after JJ lost a huge stash of drugs for him, which means that Barracuda Mike is out of a lot of money. He knows that JJ doesn't have it, but what JJ does have is the power of persuasion. He tells Barracuda Mike that he is onto this huge treasure and he can get him his money. And at first, Barracuda Mike doesn't believe any of it, but once again, JJ's persuasion skills are incredible. And not only does he convince Barracuda Mike to let him go, he convinces Barracuda Mike to actually help him get Key back, because Barracuda Mike is going to be the getaway driver at Kitty Hawk. And if the Cameron plane has already left, Barracuda Mike is going to put Key and JJ on the next plane down to South America. In exchange for all of this, he's going to get a lot of gold and then some. Now it's just a matter of JJ getting into the camp. JJ is able to use those persuasive skills at the front and sneak in saying he's got a delivery. He leaves the Twinkie there as a decoy, figuring that once he and Key escape, a lot of the cops are going to head there thinking that that's their getaway vehicle, not realizing Barracuda Mike is waiting on the side of the road. JJ then finds the office and says he's got a message for Kiara. Although the woman tells him, "We don't do that. I mean, you're not even supposed to be here." But for the first 6 weeks, they don't have any contact with the outside world. JJ notices that this woman has a picture of her cat on her desk. So he plays off of this, telling the woman that Key's pet cat had just died. He leaves the office and then watches the woman leave her office and then go right to where Key is to give her the, quote, bad news. Now JJ knows where she is, and late that night, he sneaks into her cabin, finds her, apologizes, they kiss, everybody cheers, it's adorable, and then they sneak out. It's a covert operation, but it's one that works because Mike is waiting for him, and now it's just a matter of getting to South America on one plane or the other. As for the Cameron plane, that had to leave early. When Rafe woke up that morning, he had second thoughts about what he asked Barry to do. First thing he did was head over to Barry's place and say, "I'm calling it off." But Barry had already hired a guy to do it. And that really pisses off Rafe because Rafe thought that Barry was going to do it himself, not hire an outside gun. He knows it's a matter of time before this hitman arrives at Ward's dock, so he has to rush there. And when he gets there, the hitman is in full hitman mode. He had already stabbed Ward, and he's about to finish off the job, and that's when Rafe shows up and saves him. Rafe starts beating the ever-loving crap out of this guy. But all of it is witnessed by a kayaker who just so happens to be on the water. At first, he asks Rafe if he wants him to call the police, which Rafe says no, and then this kayaker notices that it's Ward Cameron who's hurt. And that is shocking because as far as anyone knows, Ward Cameron's dead. Well, Rafe tells this guy not to call the police. The guy ultimately does, and Rafe figures this. So it's a race to the airfield. They show up at the airfield before Kiara, before JJ, and nobody's really pumped to see Ward Cameron. Everybody's pretty surprised, but it is his plane. There's not a lot they can do about it. He's also severely injured. They then hear police sirens. That's because not only are the police after Ward Cameron, but they're also after John B. Topper decided to press those charges. He's not waiting around. So while the group would like to wait for JJ and Key, they can't. Because if they do, they're going to be arrested. Right before he does take off, Ward looks at Rafe and apologizes. He also thanks him for saving his life and says, "It's all yours now." A couple minutes later, the plane takes off for South America. On the ride down there, Sarah is trying to tend to her father's wound, but it's pretty bad. Everybody is very suspicious about talking about anything around Ward, but he assures everybody, "You've got nothing to worry about with me. I'm actually just here to help you guys." They're still on high alert. But the good news is they're headed to South America. And when Key and JJ realize that the plane left, they just jump on Barracuda Mike's plane, so they're headed there as well. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.